Hey, welcome back. It's Food News and Choose Radio. Chef Jeremy Ashby, that's Sylvia Lovely on Twitch, and we got a lot of show to talk about. Second half of the show, Dining Out For Life with AVOL. Anthony Smallwood's coming by.
That is fascinating.
It's a great organization, and it's a great reason to go eat out.
And Anthony Smallwood is so awesome. But we've got a dinner coming up at Azure.
I do.
And we need to hear about it.
Yes, exactly. Basically, we got the Four Roses tasting menu, and we've been working with that distillery for a lot of years. I think their local presence is pretty high, and they have a great portfolio. They really kind of work the market.
Where is it? Is it in Frankfurt?
Lawrenceburg.
Lawrenceburg.
Yeah. So
great tour, by the way. If you've never been on the Four Roses tour, it's a great tour.
Yeah, and they really invested into that kind of, as all the distilleries are, that kind of tour thing. So if you guys got buddies coming in town that are into bourbon, or this is the one, or if you're just kind of a bourbon aficionado, because I like playing with this portfolio. I think it's just a very strong Kentucky bourbon, just a good, solid choice. So we're going to do a Yellowtail Snapper dish for our first one for the Yellow Label Four Roses. And that one I've got in a little Caribbean feel, mostly because I got a little bit of like kind of pineapple-y, lime, citrus kind of notes whenever I tasted the bourbon, which is an unusual flavor combination to pull out of bourbon. Bright forward citrus for me is what I got. So I did Yellowtail Snapper crusted in macadamia nuts. I've got it with sweet potatoes and yucca and some hominy. And I've got some grilled pineapple and a bourbon compote on it. So Caribbean kind of Kentucky fusion there, which I'm excited about. These flavor combinations work for me as a style, and mostly because I cooked in Florida and I live in Kentucky, and I find that's pretty common amongst our horse people. They live and work in Florida and live in Kentucky.
Because you could change it with rum and make it
the Southern Caribbean Floridian works in Kentucky. Beast burgers. This one I'm excited about, Sylvia.
Oh, it sounds good.
Yeah, I hope you try at least 3 of these critters.
I know.
So I've got a hamburger patty that's Wagyu beef, ground boar, ground elk, and ground venison.
Now in one patty?
In one patty.
Ooh.
Beast burgers, baby.
How big are these patties?
That?
Well, I'm doing a slider because it's a
Slider,
so I'll probably do a 3-ouncer, just enough to get on a little brioche bun, and I'm keeping it pretty simple. I'm going to do a truffle, like a melted truffle cheese on it, and then a blackberry black pepper ketchup. And then I'm going to take onion rings, like big thick ones.
Ooh, yes,
and I'm going to infuse buttermilk with lots of lemon juice and fresh thyme and herbs. I'm going to put my onion rings in there, and I'm going to cover them and slowly cook them so they soak up buttermilk and lemon flavor. And then I'll cool them. And the onion rings that are all fused, I'm going to buttermilk fry them crispy. So you've got that really tart, lemony buttermilk fried onion on that burger. So I think that's all that little guy needs. Just a nice little hamburger done up all fancy with every little critter on earth on it. Right?
What are the meats again? You got a Wagyu,
beef, boar, elk, and venison.
Wow.
Now, elk and venison's pretty close. You know, elk's just being very lean, so is venison.
Sort of a gamey hamburger.
Yeah, and it does have a little bit of a gamey infusion to it. It does have it has its own taste because it's, I guess, its own beast.
But the lemon kind of cuts through that, but also the fat from the Wagyu
helps the elk.
Yeah, elk and venison
other two.
very lean.
There you go.
Boar is actually actual wild boar is very lean,
Very
right?
lean.
It's not like pork like we think. It's and it's a darker meat, right?
Yeah, so the Wagyu really helps the entire texture. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm guilty of running elk burgers and stuff like that. I don't eat them. I mean, I think it's fun and for people to try, but I've tried them and they're too lean for me.
They're too lean for you.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, we forget it. Fat is our friend.
Fat is king.
Fat is our friend when it comes to flavor.
All right, so speaking of fat, we're going to go right into Four Roses single barrel, and I'm going to cut that with a lot of fat. I'm going to take pork belly, a whole big pork belly, and rub that down with chilies and miso, that fermented soybean.
Yeah.
Because if you kind of think about miso and bourbon mash, there's some characteristics that
fermented.
are the same.
Fermented.
Yeah. So I'm going for that kind of rub, and if I can find some spit mash, I might add that to this rub and let that cure overnight. Then we'll braise the pork belly. Then we'll fry it up crispy. But I'm gonna toss in a nice little kind of a bourbon smoked hot honey that we make at the restaurant, and we'll hear more about that in the future. It's a sauce you might be able to buy soon. So we're going to douse the pork belly in that, and then I'm going to serve it with a conch fritter. And I hope you guys know what conch is.
Fritter, yeah.
So I love the combination of a shellfish and pork.
That reminds me of Atomic Cafe. Remember, that's where
exactly.
that
And they're just going to taste just like those.
So a conch, if you go to the beach and you see the iconic, the big shell you put to your ear, that's a conch shell. And there's an animal that lives in there. It's like a very large clam. I mean, it's a mollusk. There's no other way. It's a shellfish. And generally, you eat them breaded. They're delicious. If you ever gone to Key West, you probably had conch fritters, but you don't see them a lot in Kentucky.
Yeah. No, you don't, and it's a good flavor.
Atomic Cafe, I haven't seen them actually.
Yeah, so we're gonna do a version of a surf and turf almost, a pork belly and a conch. Different.
Oh man, that sounds good.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna put a little cucumber with that, daikon, habanero orange tartar sauce for the conch fritter, and the hot honey for the pork belly. And then last but not least, this is one I want to try. I'm going to kind of make a chocolate pretzel bourbon tort, and just a tort I've been wanting to make myself. So I'm going to kind of make a combination of pretzel, almond, and graham cracker crust, and then make a bourbon chocolate kind of ganache to pour into that shell. So it's a nice little chocolate tart. And then
the saltiness of the pretzel, right?
What kind of pairing?
Then
do you
I'm going to use
that
bourbon cream and coffee ice cream on top, and some bourbon caramel. It's going to really rock. Yeah, it's going to be good chocolate.
Oh man! So did you say what kind of bourbon with a dessert?
We're going to do a little small batch select on that one, and that's that has. Well, how do I say this? It's viscous. It's thick. Has more of that bricks kind of sugar syrupy feel. I think it'll go okay with dessert. And chocolate and bourbon really works.
Because I drink Four Roses at home, and it's amazing how the small batch and the select, how they're all, you think, they all come from the same warehouse. They all come from the same mash bill. They all come from the same, yet they're all very individual.
Yeah.
And small batch and single barrel, it's all very unique to that. Whatever part of the rick house it was in, it's all very unique to every barrel.
Yeah,
that is right.
I think that's the beauty of bourbon is like you can get two bottles, get them a year apart.
It's still different. Yeah,
it's different.
And it's good that we're recognizing that bourbon can have bad years like wine. There are different temperature and climate that affects those rick houses that make it different. The Angels Share, Devil's Envy.
Do you know what? Like I was curious. For grapes, and speaking of wine, for grapes, when it's very cold, they make that thing called ice wine, and the frost changes the molecular. Anyway, I wonder if it's like that for bourbon. Like a very cold winter produces a more viscous bourbon,
probably so.
Or vice versa. I'm curious about that.
That's a question we'll ask some of the master distillers we know. I wouldn't have the same bacteria that grows the fungus on the grapes that macerates them into sugar, but there could be other molds that happen that they could be, some people, they could be looking for them. It could be good things.
Yeah. All right, well, that sounds delicious, but we've got a couple of TikTok trends going on.
Yeah. You found one. I had never heard of this before, but Sylvia, gravestone recipes.
Yeah.
I'm Googling that as we speak. Explain
huge phenomenon. Yeah. There are people that post on TikTok who go around, blah, 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 who go around, and I'm thinking about that bourbon. Anyway, who go around the country and collect these recipes that are, there's cookie recipes, pie recipes, and, it's like, what they do, a lot of them do, is they get kind of ingrained with the family. And it helps, and the families report back how wonderful it is that someone paid attention to their loved one. And it's like become a bigger thing than even just, sort of like what you were saying earlier, Twitch, about food being the convener. And,
people gather around a
why
table.
Would you put a recipe on a gravestone? Because food, it was so essential, and it was probably grandmother, it was probably a mother or a father, someone who made the best chocolate chip cookies ever.
It's exactly
and they put it on. What a better tribute!
Like this is what I leave to the world.
You couldn't have a better tribute.
There's actually a cookbook based on these recipes. If you Google gravestone cookbook, it's there, and it's the story of a woman who's been going around the country doing exactly this, finding gravestone recipes and putting them in.
Her name is Grant, I think. Yeah, Miss Grant goes around and does this. I mean, it's so awesome. So,
I love
Chef,
this.
What are you going to put on your gravestone?
I'm going to do that. I'm going to, because I really think this is good knowledge for future generations too. I mean, imagine the great floods. What are we going to do if that happens again and we don't have the recipe for Coca-Cola written down somewhere or chilled into some stone?
You know what else it says it's doing? What they're hoping is it brings back cemeteries as places of peaceful.
Yes.
You know, you go and you visit, and now with so much cremation, a lot of times you don't have that.
I wonder if I could do a dinner at Azura on gravestone recipe. What is that? Too morbid though?
Yeah,
I mean, it's really a celebration.
Actually, I don't think so. I think it's a celebration of life.
I agree.
Okay.
So
and I think it could be done.
The phrase everyone's heard the phrase.
Be a Halloween one.
Oh,
cool.
I like that.
That would be.
Everyone
cool.
said the phrase "take it to the grave." You know, oh, what's that secret? I'm taking it to the grave. Well, do you have recipes that you will not share, that you will take to the grave, and then maybe when you die you will let the world
them.
but
Leave them to the world.
Do you have secret recipes? Are there secrets in that kitchen that you won't let people know or tell?
I'm pretty forthgiving. There's little tweaks that I protect myself with because I have some intellectual property.
So no one can make it exactly like you.
Yeah.
So
very close.
Right. But do you find that I feel like it used to be a very secret process. Everyone had a secret recipe. And no one would tell anybody what that was. Do you see, is that still a thing?
No, there's not enough health to go around. You tell everybody what they need to know to get the job done as quick as possible.
That's true.
You share all the information.
Well, that's a famous kind of scene in movies, and there's this show called Everybody Loves Raymond or something, where the grandmother protects her recipes and won't let the daughter, and actually changes them and makes them not taste good so that her daughter-in-law can't
well, I mean,
the
that used to be a very big thing.
She wants to retain that.
Every county had someone who could make a certain kind of pie,
and
or something.
Wasn't going to reveal their secret.
We're not going to tell you, but now you could literally take it to the grave with you, then
I just think that's interesting that someone cares enough about their recipe and mom's recipe to put it, and one of them even has
that's what some people are known for,
a concrete book that's open where the recipe is outlined.
I'm looking at that one right now. Spritz cookies, a concrete it's a gravestone in the shape of a cookbook,
open to the page where the cookies are.
That's really
I think it's fascinating, and I wonder how detailed they get. Is there like any multi-step, like
it looks
meatloafs
like it on
and
some
stuff?
of them, on the pictures that I've seen? It looks like first you do this.
Like they spent a lot of money engraving.
I know, just think about that.
I like that.
So, Twitch, what's your gravestone recipe?
The thing, oh God, my gravestone recipe. There's nothing. I'm an open book. I have no secrets.
I don't either.
No secrets at all.
I would do it. Probably whatever I'd put on it, somebody would try and mess it up because I would have left an essential step out, like the noodles in lasagna, which I did once.
Now, the other TikTok trend that's happening this week is people in America are finally discovering that what makes European food in some ways better than American food is that a simple ham and cheese sandwich in Europe is buttered before. And almost all sandwiches in Europe are buttered instead of mayonnaise. And for whatever reason, it's blowing people's minds over here.
Butter tastes so good.
Right.
I mean, it's just an old trick. I guess maybe we just have our larder a little bit confused in the United States. Because over there, they're using the mayonnaise for the fries. Right?
Do they really?
And not the mayonnaise unless they put the butter on the sandwich. So I don't know. Maybe...
Well, putting fat on a sandwich serves a couple purposes. Other than flavor, it also keeps it so that the bread doesn't get soggy, so you can hold it longer. So putting a butter barrier on like a ham sandwich keeps the ham from soaking the bread. So there's actually a mechanical use for it.
Yeah, you can put a slice of tomato on there and everything.
Yeah.
I think that I was trying to think, but see, mayo has as many calories as butter. I was trying to think if that's like something... or just the availability. The mayonnaise companies made sure it happened.
I think the reason we don't do it, I've been thinking about this, and I think it's because in America, we've been told for so long that butter is bad for us.
I think you're right.
And it's just recently that people are starting to really eat butter again regularly. Because for years, we were given all these weird butter substitutes and told butter was bad and you should eat this and that. When in Europe, they're like, we've been eating butter for hundreds and thousands of years, and we're going to keep eating butter.
Yeah, like a simple crudité there is like a pile of fresh vegetables and a pile of fresh salted butter. And you dip your...
And you have a small farm kind of culture there, you know. I mean, that's my
People are
image
making
of
butter.
Europe, you know, is the little...
And they have better butter. Let's just be honest. They have better butter than we do. The butter they eat is delicious,
Yes,
and
it
it's
is, 'cause
yellow, and it's stronger, and
you
it's
can buy that's what Irish butter.
yeah.
You can get Irish blocks of butter.
The butter we get here is good. All butter's good, but the butter they get there is just
A little more gamey.
And we went to margarine for a while. Remember when that's kind of the craze, and now we're back to butter.
Oh, thank God, yeah. I think the polyhydride or the
unsaturated or
Whatever it was.
Yes,
It was
hydrogenated oils became very bad.
There you go.
What makes European butter better?
Okay, so really I think, and correct me if I'm wrong out there, but what I understand about Irish butter and just the grazing of the cows is, they just have a grass-fed diet, and they're just milked, and you get a lot of terroir.
Well,
maybe they don't pasteurize it as much.
Do you think it's really that much better, or we just think it is? Because I think of Ireland, and I go to the cow, and it goes right to my plate. I just think of it as a small town culture. And I don't even know that it is any more than we are.
Well, it's like eating seafood by the beach. We've said this before.
It just tastes better.
You can eat a fried flounder sandwich at the beach where that flounder did not come from.
Yeah.
Didn't come
and
from
it
those
still
waters.
Tastes better.
But it tastes better than eating it inland.
Yeah, the whole when in Rome thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just right, and you can just
But
the
also
image of a cow grazing.
Hot dogs at a baseball game.
Oh,
It's
nothing
just,
better.
Right.
I think part of it, though, is the European standards. Their standards for, say, a butter or a cheese are much different than ours. They're legally required to do certain things before they can call it butter.
Not do certain things.
And not do certain things and not have certain additives.
Right.
Whereas here, it's kind of more fair. It's more, open season.
To the market, yeah.
Which is why
Companies can.
So more mass-produced things are a little different here because we allow it, and there they don't. Like, there are laws written about what can be in Parmesan cheese, and it's a law in Italy if it's not exactly...
Guys, we should look up some of these and talk about that on air, like the differences between European food standards and American.
Yeah, well, it's a whole lot more GMO police.
Well, there's a law in Italy of what you can put on it, what can go in pizza dough.
And I think it's timely, guys, because we're going to have a food crisis coming up with Ukraine and
and wheat, and different. Yes,
we're talking. And the biggest concern I'm hearing right now is fertilizer.
Yeah.
As in, Russia is the biggest producer of fertilizers for the world.
Oh yeah, we're heading that way.
This
is scary.
We have to talk about it a little bit.
Well, breads are another thing. Like in Europe, you kind of think of going into a French bakery and you're going to get authentic. What is that? What is authentic bread?
What is it about their
and
wheat
what
that
is
makes
it?
Yeah.
So they don't. Yeah.
Is that just? I mean, it's a fascinating thing. It's like their cultures are so old that food is really treasured. Just like wine is treasured in some places. And, just they start drinking wine at midday and they're not alcoholics. They just know how to drink
I also
good
think
wine.
they're not as trendy as we are, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean, for us, if the doctors say blah 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 is good for you, we all do that. And there, it's like we've been doing this for thousands of years. We're not changing our lifestyle based on your new info.
Know what happened to the bread industry in the United States? Because if you look at Europe and the thousands of years of artisan baking, it's almost like we got instructions from the heavens. This is a daily bread. It's part. Back then we had whole grains and we didn't strip it of all the germ and whatever makes it good, right, for us. And then we started adding a lot of salt and sugar and oil.
Yeah,
it went from, a very wholesome daily part of your diet that regulates glycemic and does a lot of good things for you to cake.
Yeah. Well, I think we turned it into too much policing of things that are actually very savory.
Yeah.
And our ancestors, of course, maybe they didn't live as long, but they ate bacon and eggs and gravy and biscuits. And
in America, the sugar industry around the 1940s, 1950s, they changed the view of sugar in America and corn syrup and all that in a way that was not good for the people.
That's right.
Based on studies that now we know are kind of But anyway, there's a lot to be said. We got to take a break. In a moment, we're going to talk to Anthony Smallwood. He is of AVOL. They're doing Dining Out For Life next week. We're going to talk about that next, so don't go anywhere. It's Food News and Chews Radio. Welcome back. It's Food News and Chews Radio. Every year there's a big event. There are a few big food events in town, but one of them that is my favorite is Dine Out For Life, and it's through AVOL, which is an amazing local organization. We've had this guest on before. His name is Anthony Smallwood, Community Engagement
Manager.
Yes.
That is so cool, and it
At
just
AVOL.
barely touches the surface of what you are, because you're a gatherer and you are an influencer in this town. I mean, you do so many things.
Well, aren't you kind?
Yeah.
Thank
now
you.
tell us what
She says that
AVOL.
to everybody.
Yeah, I know. No,
She does.
no,
So I shouldn't
No, I
feel
don't.
too complimentary.
I love Anthony. Tell us what AVOL actually stands for. Tell us a little bit about the organization.
So everyone gets this a little bit confused. Years ago, when we were first started, AVOL was an acronym, and it stood for AIDS Volunteers of Lexington. We dropped that several years ago, so that's not us anymore. If you refer to us as that, then you're not
Informed.
with our current
It's a little more now,
mission.
right?
It has grown to be much more. We serve 72 counties in Kentucky.
Wow.
So we had to drop the of Lexington. And we're also morphing into an agency that not only works with people living with and struggling with HIV and AIDS, but we are opening that up to help those who are medically vulnerable, including those living with HIV and AIDS.
Oh, that is awesome. I didn't know
So
this.
it's gonna be a much bigger
Medically vulnerable.
medically vulnerable.
So,
and
I
we're
would-
still trying to define who
What
fits
that
into
is.
that.
But I imagine
anyway,
since the pandemic, that has also changed a lot because a lot of people were medically vulnerable, and now after the pandemic
Right.
are medically vulnerable, right?
I think that might have even prompted this. We saw a lot of people,
Yeah.
even if we didn't have the resources to help them, we sort of accidentally became a resource that people would reach out to and
Well,
say, hey, I
sure.
need help with this, but I don't have HIV, but
Anthony,
blah,
I
blah, blah.
love
I need
this.
help. How do we do this? So if we couldn't help them, we kind of took it on ourselves to become
find
that
resources.
resource to find them help.
I love that.
And so we're pretty excited about it.
You said
Yeah.
72 counties?
72 counties. We have a mobile testing van that we can take any place that they will let us park it on the street or in a parking lot or whatever, and we
You'll do it.
continue to
You'll
do
do
our
it.
free HIV testing, which everyone should know their status. If they are active, sexually active, then they should be
And-
tested.
And Anthony, there's a lot of new drug regimens, right?
Oh,
that
my
are
goodness,
actually
yes.
helping.
Oh, the world has
remarkably.
changed
Yeah,
in
it
that
really
respect,
has.
right?
But we still have the issue. It's just that now we do have something that can help.
Over 30 years ago, when AVOL started, we were an organization of all volunteers that basically helped people die with dignity.
Yeah.
Because
It was like
when you-
hospice in a way,
Yeah.
right?
Kind of.
Because they didn't usually make it.
Right.
Yeah. If you were diagnosed with AIDS, it wasn't will I die, it was when will I die? How soon will I die? And we found that there were people dying alone, dying hungry. And so a group of people sat around a kitchen table and decided to help those people so that they wouldn't die alone and so that they could keep some dignity about them. Now,
just
here we
say-
are 30-something years later, and we have now we're helping people live and thrive. And we believe with all of the current medications and everything that you referred to, people living with HIV can take those medications, and if they stay on their regimen, then they can become
Right.
undetectable.
Right.
Undetectable.
And there's a
Yeah.
term called U equals U, undetectable. If your viral count is so low that it's undetectable, it's untransmittable according to the CDC. So
That's
if
amazing.
That is just
U equals
amazing.
U,
Yeah.
it's
and that's
huge.
just in the last few years.
Yes, it
that
is.
this
Well,
has
you
happened.
said something, and obviously this is a food show. We talk about food, dining out for life, but you made a point about how AVOL was founded around a kitchen table. How many great
I
things
know.
happen around kitchen tables?
You know
what?
Around dining tables.
It's
How
true.
many?
It's like find a need and fill it, and usually in group conversations. Because I'm very interested
around
in
food. It's
Yeah.
always people gather around,
Gather around
food and
food.
drink,
That's
and
right.
that's where great ideas happen.
Change
You know,
can happen.
Anthony, one
Huge
of the
things.
groups you said medically vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
I think there's also with the rise in mental illness recognition. I think there is a need to extend to mental illness. Okay, I'll talk to you about that later. Now, there's a need that needs to be filled.
I don't disagree at all.
There are people
Absolutely.
who need help with vendors,
Well-
plumbers who come into their house and can take advantage of them because they are mentally.
It's true.
Well, also, I think with physical ailments come mental ailments, and vice versa too. When your body's not well, sometimes your mind's not well. When your mind's not well, your body's not well.
Right.
I don't think they're independent organisms.
You
Certainly.
become vulnerable. But anyway, talk about Dining Out for Life. I'll talk to you about that later. But Dining Out for Life, tell us how this got started and how many restaurants are participating and all of that good stuff.
I think we might be, I'm trying to remember what year we're going on. I think the first time we did it was 2008, I believe. And I heard a funny statistic the other day that we raised about $20,000 that year. Now, here we are all these years later, and last year, 2022, we raised $122,000 instead of 20-something.
Yeah.
And our goal this year is $130,000, and we believe we can do it. Last year, we had 40-something restaurants. This year, we have I call it even, 55. I can't drive 55, baby, 55 locations.
I'm looking, and you can go to Dining Out for Life, and you can check out there's a Lexington, Kentucky edition. Takes place in other cities, but you can go to avolky.org.
.org,
Okay.
yes.
And it'll take you to
but
the
you can
location.
even go there quicker than going to Dining Out for Life. If you just go dineoutlex.com, you'll get a full and comprehensive list of all 55 restaurants and the shifts, and this is very important, the shifts that they're participating. Not all restaurants participate in all shifts. So if you go someplace for lunch just because you saw the name on the list, maybe
important.
they're only donating the portion from their dinner service. And so you really need to check that site and the shift that they are participating in.
And you also have what you call ambassadors who
We
go
do.
into these places. And what do the ambassadors do?
The ambassadors are our lifeblood. They are amazing. They are volunteers that agree to go into their assigned restaurant. We assign one ambassador per restaurant per shift. And they put on an apron with our AVOL logo on it, and they are just there to thank everyone for dining, because just by going out to eat that day, the way we make money is those gracious, generous restaurants agree to give 25% of what they collect that day to us.
Yowie.
That's a big ask in the restaurant world. I mean, that's we don't. It's not lost on us how big that is. And so when we go and do this, we really enjoy promoting for the whole rest of the year those restaurants. But 25% is what the restaurant gives us. And so our ambassadors just thank people for being there, because just by being there, they've already made a donation.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And then they facilitate additional donations. They have donation envelopes, and many people there go with a check in their hand. And now it's even digital. You can scan a QR code, and we have a specific QR code for each restaurant. So we know not only that it was made virtually, but what restaurant they were in when they made the donation.
It's never been easier. Honestly, it's never been easier to give.
The modern world.
Absolutely.
We give it a hard time, but there's some good stuff that goes on with it.
It's connected us. We're connected way more now, and sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. But for things like this, by the way, I'm looking at the website dineoutlex.com, and when you look at that, it has all of the restaurants. And for instance, you can see the
Azur's
Mousetrap
there.
is doing lunch and dinner. Azur,
Azur most certainly is. For how many years now? It's been
we've
several.
always been there. Yeah.
And you can click on it, get the details of that restaurant and what time. But keep in mind, this is one day. This is September 14th, Thursday,
Correct.
September 14th.
Correct.
So if you're going to be there's nothing wrong with eating out multiple times a day, or stopping and having lunch, then get some ice cream. There's some ice cream places
for
on
that.
there. There's dessert places. There's coffee, Nate's Coffee. So there's a lot of ways to help
You
out.
said
It's
that
really amazing.
that the numbers of restaurants is coming back too. I mean, the pandemic struck us in ways which probably made the work of AVOL harder. Because more and more people were driven, and probably COVID on top of HIV. And
our focus changed during the big year of COVID. I will say this because as I mentioned earlier, of the generosity and graciousness that the restaurants have shown AVOL for so many years for this event. In 2020, yes, 2020.
It's hard to remember, isn't it?
I know, it's all running together. But in 2020, our focus, of course, it was a fundraiser, as it always is intended to be, but our focus really became getting people out safely, out in the restaurants and out to eat, and kind of getting to do something that was somewhat normal again. And so it really became as big a challenge to show the love to our restaurants and get people in there to support them, whether it was carry out food or whatever. If they were still afraid to go in, they could get carry out.
You bring an interesting point up. That helps the restaurants. Having a day, sort of like Restaurant Week in miniature, one day. And that actually, so you have so many supporters out there.
Well, it's mutually beneficial. You know, the restaurants are helping AVOL, the patrons are helping
bringing
AVOL,
in more people.
but they're also helping the restaurants because, you know, we're coming out of it. We're probably not 100% of where we were pre-pandemic yet, but everyone needs a little help, and the money that's being collected stays in the community. It stays in the restaurants, you know, help pay people locally. Then
that's
72 counties in Kentucky are being serviced by AVOL. I mean, we're all in this together.
And you know, it's even bigger than that because as you were mentioning the Dining Out for Life website earlier, and then you go to the Lexington tab, there are a lot of people from out of town, a lot of people when they travel that are associated with Dining Out for Life. And by being associated with Dining Out for Life, even though they don't live here, they might have a Dining Out for Life event in their city.
This happens in a lot of cities.
Right. This happens in almost 60 cities in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Different dates, but primarily in April, but ours is in April because it's leading up to the Derby. And so the restaurants are already busy. So we don't want to take anything away from them, and then we don't, you know, we know that that
and this
it's
is
already going to be full.
This time of year, it's always a good time to get people in restaurants as summer's winding up. And fall is getting here. It's a good time to.
It's
summer's
nice.
Always, and you guys are in the restaurant business. Jeremy can probably attest to this. Summer's always a slower time, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Well, yes and no.
I
think
this year.
let me see if I can explain it. I think across the nation, summer can be a busy time. But you guys out there know it. Kentucky's patio country, man. We like to eat outside. We like the country tables. We like the corn. We like the tomatoes. So we eat out.
Maters. That's maters and taters.
Maters and taters and corn.
Yeah. Now, and I tell you, if you look at a map, now I know we've had some hot days, but we haven't had nearly as much as some people. And our patio has been extremely comfortable.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, we're really lucky on that sense.
Yeah.
So, which is great for restaurants because in our region, that's when all the produce is coming in. Yep. And, you know, that's when it's best. That's when it's local. And quite frankly, that's when it's cheapest.
Kentucky proud.
So it's just a really good.
And that's when people bring you bags of tomatoes, maters, and
sweet corn.
Peppers.
I'm about to post a public service announcement saying I can no longer accept your hobby farm produce.
I brought a bunch of peppers, So,
Is that happening a lot still?
Hey.
Oh, well, you know, people mean well. I mean, they grow something, they put time into it, they put passion in it, they don't want to throw it away. Jeremy will fix it. You know, Jeremy will take care of it.
Feed it to the people, Jeremy.
Hey, Anthony, you're also a cook.
I love to cook. Oh my gosh, I'm an old-fashioned cook. My mommy was, you know, that's the way she showed love. She'd get in that kitchen and she just would whip stuff up, and she could make something from nothing. And I love to do that. Just take leftovers or take whatever's in the cupboard and say, wonder what I can make from this.
Okay, do you need a second career?
Because
I need your help.
Out loud to chef.
Frankly, what he just described right there is the epitome of what makes a good chef. Every single young cook or chef that I see come in the kitchen that has that background soars.
Because not everything is beef tenderloin.
And not everything is beef tenderloin, but also I think that those early food impressions and the way your grandmama and your granny season things and your mama season stuff is ingrained.
And
people
a little
are
pinch of
afraid of
this and a
salt
little
and
pinch
pepper
of
and
that,
spices. They're afraid to death of them, so they don't use them. Yeah. So if you have that a good, strong Southern cook, French cook, Italian cook showing you the way things should taste, that sticks with you, and you're not afraid to say this is like my mom made.
When you say Southern, my first thought is pork fat. When you say Southern cooking, my first thought is, put more pork fat in it.
Well, you're not wrong.
Bacon.
A little fat back in it. That's,
or how about
bacon grease?
How about bacon? Yeah,
ain't you got no bacon grease?
Anything.
Ain't you got no trim? Grease.
Anthony Smallwood. And then beans.
Beans,
Anthony
maters, and
Smallwood
taters.
of AVOL. Dining Out for Life. Check out dineoutlex.com. Check out all the restaurants participating. It goes by so fast, but Anthony, thank you so much for coming in.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Back
darling.
September 14th, next Thursday, or I guess it's coming Thursday. Dine Out for Life. AVOL. Check it out at dineoutlex.com. Back in a moment. Food News and Shoes Radio.